Revolution Radio proudly presents, live from the heart of the Blue Ridge, Roanoke, Virginia. It's the Just Bernard Show with host Bernard Alvarez. Join Bernard as he shares topics that reveal the real matrix and empower your human experience, including world liberty, the esoteric, suppressed technologies, spiritual ascension, and human consciousness. Humanity has awakened, and our time has come to realize our full potential. And now, live from the Star City, your host, Bernard Alvarez.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Just Bernard Show here on Revolution Radio. Welcome everybody. We've got another fantastic show for you today. We are going to be speaking with Maria Wheatley in just a few moments to discuss some of the megalithic temples of ancient England and Ireland and even more. So many different topics we are going to be covering today, so stick around for that in just a moment. Before we get started, let me introduce you to our Assistant Director of the GIC, the Global Illumination Council, Reverend Trevor is joining us live from Winnipeg, Manitoba, and he will be on chat taking your questions for this show. Hello, Trevor. How are you today?
Hello. I'm doing well. How about you?
Very good, very good. I know this is just a cliche question, but I've got to know: is it spring up there yet?
Still winter.
Really? Wow.
Got up to go to work in the morning. Temperature dropped, and we got a huge dumping of snow again.
Oh my gosh! I couldn't believe it when you told me that there was still snow on the ground last week. Well, you know, we had our fair share of a very, very late winter here as well. But anyway, so keep an eye on the chat. Let us know, everybody. Please feel free to send your questions to Trevor. He's on there live now to take your questions. Before we get started, I just wanted to remind everybody that we do other programs as well, and we are uploading our programs every Tuesday and Thursday on our YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/justbernard. And today we will be uploading our GIC TV broadcast with Gwilda Wayaka, who is a modern shamanistic practitioner. And the show is called Spiritual Evolution. I think you're really, really going to like it. She's a very balanced woman and talks about everything that we talk about, the suppressed knowledge, the suppressed technology, and what we can do to empower ourselves, which is our message here as well. Today we are joined by Maria Wheatley. I'm not sure where in the UK she is, but she'll tell us in just a moment. Maria studies hidden archaeology. She studies lost artifacts. Today she's going to be talking to us a bit about some of the history behind Stonehenge, strange hieroglyph symbols, and sharing with us some evidence that suggests that Stonehenge is actually 10,000 years old, not 5,000 years old. As well, we're going to be discussing energy patterns, ley lines, dowsing, a bunch of other things that are going to be very fascinating to get into as the show progresses. So without further ado, let me welcome our special guest, Maria Wheatley. Hello, Maria. How are you today?
Hi, yeah, I'm very well, thanks.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you on. I'm sure many people who are listeners remember we had to reschedule you, and we're very happy that you're feeling better and you're here joining us. I hope that those of you who missed the show are here listening now as well. And we couldn't be happier to have you on the show today, so thank you for coming on.
You're welcome.
So Maria, you have been, I would think that you have been studying much of this for quite a while now, and I can't help but wonder, and for our listeners, a little bit about where you grew up, how you got involved and focused on this type of work, and how you got to be to where you are doing this as your main focus of work now.
Yeah, sure. Well, where I live in England, I'm very close to Avebury Henge, which is a gigantic stone circle. Well, it contains the largest stone circle in the world. And so I'm right in megalithic country, if you will. And I love it here. It's really, really great. I got into dowsing and studying ley lines and earth energies mainly through my late father, Dennis Wheatley. He was considered a top UK British dowser, and he wrote several books on dowsing, and he really kind of looked in depth into specific earth energy patterns and how they were skillfully integrated into the megalithic architecture of sites like Stonehenge and Avebury and mounds worldwide, for example. And I've kind of taken his research and continued it, but not just with dowsing, but trying to get some really good sophisticated electrical sensing equipment, Geiger counters, for instance, frequency testers, and looking at the Earth energy patterns from a scientific point of view as well as a dowsing point of view.
Oh, wonderful.
In fact, I've been out today actually doing some tests with a fellow colleague called David Webb, and we've been looking at the audible frequencies around certain points within Avebury Henge and a gigantic mound nearby called Silbury Hill.
I've heard of that hill actually. What are you finding there?
Well, what we're finding is very intriguing, for example, especially with frequency, and the frequencies are in what's called hertz. And basically, in a nutshell, so to speak, and to keep it very simple, we can hear from the average person, that is, from say about, 20 hertz, way, way, way up to a high scale. We don't normally hear anything below 20 hertz, for example. Certain animals can, of course, but we generally can't. And what we've been finding at certain points within the stone, that's gigantic, standing stones, and at certain points in places like Avebury, for example, you have sections that emit very low signals, about 18 hertz. So that's just below our ability to hear that sound. So I often suggest, that certain ley lines that emit this kind of frequency, perhaps our ancestors, very attuned to the ancient landscape with no, electromagnetic smog, no microwave signals, etc., could actually hear these frequencies.
Oh, wouldn't that be just wonderful? And is there, besides using, I guess, how shall I say, scientific devices, is there a way to be able to hear them with the audible ear?
Well, I think certain atmospheric conditions tend to trigger some of the monuments in the UK at least. For example, I was waiting for a Canadian group to arrive at Avebury about 10 years ago, actually, and there was a thunderstorm rolling in the valley, and it was really raining very hard. I was stood there by a stone, like dripping wet. Anyway, the group came over really excitable and running towards me and saying, "We can hear the stone sing. We can hear the stone sing." And I said, "This I've got to hear. You take me exactly to, where you've heard this." And they took me there, and the stones were all emitting this frequency sound. And strangely, none of us touched the stones. It was almost like unconsciously we knew not to go too close
Right.
To the standing stones. So yeah, I think certain atmospheric conditions can trigger their internal crystal matrix structure, if you will, to emit the sound.
That's fascinating. And I can't help but wonder, was when these stones were they placed there purposefully to generate this type of vibration?
Oh, I think undoubtedly,
Yeah.
yes. I mean, the ancients kind of almost like mapped out the subtle frequencies and earth energies globally. I mean, this was a global project because, very similar designs that are incorporated into Stonehenge, for instance, are incorporated into Mayan temples, Tibetan temples, etc., etc. So there's a lot of similarity globally.
Right, right. I was just going to say, it seems like, and I'm one who kind of believes in this hypothesis. There seems to be as we say, a hidden technology that seemed to maybe have been around during the time of the Mayans and those who built these giant megalithic structures. Is that kind of what you're talking about, and what you're seeing?
Oh yeah, I think the ancients did definitely have the advanced form of technology that they could tap in to the earth and cosmic forces, alike. They could tap into this, harness it, and use it, because standing stones, if you put them into, like, for instance, a ley line or an earth energy pattern, they start to behave in a very coherent way. And they do this by kind of absorbing the kind of ley energy, or the earth energy, if you will, into its internal structure. And it has 7 key points on a stone, 2 of which are underground and 5 of which are above. So imagine a standing stone with like 5 key points above the ground. Well, that's 7 points in total, which can equate to our chakra system, for instance. Now, at these exact points, if you put your hand there, if you put a dowsing rod there, you will feel energy being admitted. And when we put our electromagnetic sensing equipment by those key points, which dowsers like my late father have always said are nodal chakra points of the stones, you get that 18 hertz frequency being emitted. And you can see this and have a look at it on my website and Megalithic Energy to actually see those points and our results. So the ancients knew that. They knew that they could use standing stones and other monumental structures to absorb the energy and to transmit it. I think that is what they were doing, in part, with the temples.
That's absolutely fascinating, Maria. Have you, or has anyone gone deeper into this to maybe uncover the reasons why they were doing this? Were they doing it for healing? Were they doing it for consciousness transformation? Were they trying to communicate with other cosmologies, perhaps? What was the reason behind making them emit this frequency?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and I think you've just hit the nail on the head again, because you've addressed in a few things. Were they addressing perhaps extraterrestrial races? What were they doing with this energy? And I think they were using it for healing in parts of the temple, because in parts of Stonehenge, in parts of Avebury and some sites in Ireland, what you get is an massive outpouring of negative ions over certain earth energy patterns. Yeah, massive outpourings. And this is really good for our health. So I'm sure that they were tapping into the healing force of Gaia, of our Earth Mother, and they're also tapping into that other kind of signals and ley lines alike, which can change our consciousness. So I think they're multifaceted stone circles. I don't think they have one precise job to do, as it were.
Right, exactly. I'm sure, as with any tool, it can be used creatively in many different ways. Especially if we're accepting the fact that this was a technology that they were all using, they could utilize it in so many different ways. The let me jump the gun a little bit and change the topic just a drop, because so many people are very fascinated with Stonehenge. And
Sure.
I am one of these people that I question everything, especially when it comes from mainstream media or mainstream science. I see the evidence over and over again, especially in Egypt, where we are having, I guess, agreed upon theories, agreed upon hypotheses that are kind of just being accepted as fact. But yet, when new information comes in, they're not really sharing the new information. And I guess the term I might be searching for is like empirical evidence. Just seems to not keep up with the new data that is coming in. And you have suggested that you have some new data in reference to the age of Stonehenge and how Phase I began 10,000 years ago. Did you find an artifact, a metal plaque, or something that
There's a few
describes
key
this?
points. Yeah. There's a few key points
Thank you.
to put in Stonehenge to that date. Yeah. I mean, everything in England is conveniently labelled 3000 BC. It's this convenient little label and time factor that they've put on. That could be Avebury, that could be whatever. That's the time scale that they use. But you see, when I've looked at the archaeological evidence coming out of Stonehenge recently by the Riverside Project, led by an archaeologist called Michael Parker Pearson, they have certain artifacts that they have found, one of which, for example, is just carbon in the ground. Now, when they analysed that carbon, it came from the first phase when the blue stones from Wales were erected at Stonehenge, and they found that the two dates came out. Two dates were these. They were 3000 BC, which ticked their little box, if you will, and the other was 7500 BC, which really shifts it back to about 10,000 years old, for example. But they chose that. Now, there have been some very strange artifacts found at Stonehenge, and one of which is a metal plate that was found in the Elizabethan era, and that's about sort of like 525, for example, around that time. And it was recorded by a very learned gentleman at the time called William Camden. He was like a mapper. He went around mapping all the ancient sites in the Elizabethan time, including Stonehenge. And he made reference to a very strange metal plate that was found with really strange characters written upon them. Now, at that time, we must remember that foreign languages in the UK were quite well known because we were at the height of Catholic power and the Pope reigned supreme, for instance. We were used to Latin. In fact, English didn't come in until about 1601. So people were used to seeing Latin, for example. So modern-day scholars said, oh, it was just Latin. Oh, it was just Roman. In fact, William Camden, who found this strange metal plate, even commented on what was the metal made of. He wasn't sure. He wasn't sure if it was lead. He wasn't sure if it had been mixed with something. He commented on that as well. And then later antiquarians thought it contained the history of Stonehenge, for instance, and that it was written by the Druids. But it could have been written by anybody. And again, that artifact is now sadly lost. We only have writing about it. I know, it's just so frustrating. But I'm just interested in the kind of what the metal was that could be analysed, for instance. And they all made reference, all the three antiquarians, that was William Camden, John Aubrey, and William Stukely, very famous antiquarians. They all made reference to the strange metal, and they all said it came from Stonehenge, and it contained the history and the origin of the monuments.
Very, very fascinating. And as far as the writing, is there still are there still any images of the writing, or did anybody copy it? Can it be deciphered?
Well, at the moment, this moment in time, they say they have not got any reference to it. Now, when I say they, what I mean is, like the Bodleian Library in Oxford University, that contains an awful lot of old manuscripts, and but it's very hard to get access to those manuscripts. And what's called the National Monuments Record Office, which is a collection of all the antiquarian artifacts, and they say they have now no trace of that. But intriguingly, if it was in 1528, when it was first written about by William Camden, just let's think about that for the moment. That means that metal plate stayed at Stonehenge for nearly 3,000 years in situ. That's never been moved. So it must have been very unusual for nobody to have taken it down and smelted it, for instance, during the Iron Age.
Yes, absolutely. And speaking of the time frame, I'm very interested and curious to know if the evidence is pointing to 7500 BC. Can you tell us a little bit about the people, the culture during that era, or is that still unknown?
Is this for the first phase of Stonehenge?
The first phase, yes.
Yeah. Well, you see, we do know quite a bit about the culture at that time through recent excavations and trying to sort of like join the dots to a certain degree. They were very sophisticated, for example, the people. They lived in, houses that are very similar to our own houses today. They could have been 2-story high. They were painted. They had sophisticated ways of cooking. And, let's forget that old model where, quite often on history programs, you see prehistoric people grinding down flour, yeah?
Yeah.
As if that's the only way they can do it. Well, this is a fact that totally disputes that. All the isotope readings, and that's kind of impressions left in your teeth, yeah, in the enamel in your teeth, like the kind of water you drank when you grew up, the kind of foods that you ate, are all like a library in our teeth, in the enamel.
Yeah.
And when it was found, looking at the isotopes, the grain and the flour were very, very fine. So they were not using the kind of model that we're used to being spoon-fed and drip-fed. This is how they lived. So we need to think of the people living in sophisticated, large towns, and they were importing cattle from all over the UK, from Scotland to Stonehenge. That's 500 miles of more distance. So distance wasn't necessarily a problem for them. They were moving around this island, and there's a lot of evidence as well that they were drinking a special type of water as well, which we're
really?
on to later, which is very known to have healing properties. All the evidence, again, is in isotopes. So we need to see the people of Stonehenge coming together. There wasn't much warfare, for example. There was no evidence of, killings and murders. There was kind of like a harmonic backframe and resonance to these people's lives that sadly we've lost, I suppose.
Yes, yes. And is there any evidence of what they call themselves? Being someone, the layperson who's interested in Stonehenge, we always immediately jump into the idea of druids running around in robes because, well, that's what we see in modern times. But or the Celts or whatnot, there seems to be an association between druids and Celts in Stonehenge. Is that a reasonable definition of the people, or is there something completely different?
Well, to a certain degree, it's completely different because if we look to the skulls found in the Stonehenge and southern England environs from 3000 BC, they had very long skulls. And you have what's called long barrows, which archaeologists tell us were used for burial. That was probably a secondary usage, and they were probably more like initiation chambers, but skulls were put there in their final phase. They were very long. Now, when it came to about sort of like 500, 800 years later, when Europeans migrated across the continent to the UK, for instance, they had much rounder skulls. So the ancient Britons were completely different to their European cousins. Now, the Druids were a little bit later. They came around the Iron Age, which is about 750 BC, but they could have been proto-Druid types, yeah, and that were their ancestors. So I see them as separate, but kind of as one as well. The ancient Britons, they were a unique race.
So they were different than I guess the people on the continent at the time.
Oh yeah, that's evident in the skulls that they left behind in the long barrows. They were longer, for instance. So yes, they were completely different.
And as we're talking about this culture, this race, the more ancient race, have we found evidence of perhaps their religious practices, or did they even consider what they did religion?
That's a little bit difficult because the ancient Britons sadly never left any documented evidence, i.e. in writing, for example, unlike, say, for example, Hindu cultures, the Egyptians, and even the Tibetans. So we never really wrote anything down. Ours was what's called a bardic tradition. That's an oral tradition of storytelling. So, yeah, so it's very hard to really pinpoint things down. But the monuments that they left behind do speak volumes in that they had a lot of technology at their disposal. For example, just the way Stonehenge is being built. Anyone that's been to Stonehenge will tell you it's on a slope. So one side of Stonehenge had to go in the ground much further than the other to make the circle of lintels on the top perfectly circular. That's an engineering feat.
Oh my goodness, yes it is. Wow.
Yes, it's on a slope, so they would only have to move 50 meters or 50 yards further on down and you'd be on flat ground. No, they chose to build it on that slope.
And I would think that the reason why that particular slope or that particular point was used was either to align with the stars or for energetic purposes. Have you found anything for either of those?
Oh yeah, both. Both, definitely, yeah. Because Stonehenge in its first phase, whether that's 10,000 years ago or the archaeological date of more recent, the heel stone, a very famous stone at Stonehenge, is just outside of the Stonehenge that we're all familiar with. But just to describe the first phase of Stonehenge, imagine now a circular earthwork, brilliant white, because there's chalk beneath the surface. Just like the pyramids were whitened off, if you will, weren't they, in limestone. A big circular earthwork was a beautiful white, and inside of which were 56 blue stones. And blue stones are called blue stones because they are the colour blue. But when they're highly polished, and at Stonehenge these stones were exceptionally highly polished, they appear like the midnight sky because they have little flexes of white in them, feldspar. So they were beautifully polished, looking very like the midnight sky. Great big circle of 56 stones with the outlying heel stone, which align not only in this very famous work to the summer solstice, which is still is in through the alignment too, but to the moon's metonic cycle. So every 18 years, the moon returns to the same position on the same day as it did 18 years previously, and it aligns above the heel stone. So literally every 18.61 years, there's a beautiful moonrise above the heel stone. The full moon sits upon its apex.
Wow. And that definitely would have to show some type of advanced way of formulating and engineering, I would think.
Oh, yeah, because, the moon at Stonehenge, that particular part of what's called the moon's metonic cycle, which is very complicated to work out. I mean, I use computer software. I don't even do that in my head, and I don't know any modern-day astronomer that could, in all honesty. That's at 51 degrees. Yep, that's where the moon will rise in that cycle. And Stonehenge is sited at 51 degrees of latitude. So the two are very much, again, in harmony, in resonance. So I think that was the key factor of why Stonehenge is where it is, because it's on the 51st degrees latitude. So our ancient ancestors must have evidently been aware of latitude and longitude.
Obviously. And we're going to be talking more about energy grids and energy lines and ley lines in just a moment. We're going to be taking a short break, and we'll be back in just a few minutes with Maria Wheatley. Stick around. We have much more to talk about, everyone. This is the Just Bernard Show, and my name is Bernard Alvarez. We'll be right back.
Listening to Revolution Radio. Revolution Radio.
You don't see it, do you? How close we are to absolute chaos? The sick ones are sitting on their fat asses, eating and drink themselves into a stupor, polluting the world without a second thought while it goes down the toilet. Nobody wants to do the nasty work. The shit that we all just think about. Most good citizens are just along for the ride and then bitch and moan and complain about everything when it doesn't work out. Not me. Get it done.
Revolution Radio, where we do the nasty work. www.freedomslips.com.
back to your host, Bernard Alvarez.
Welcome back to the Just Bernard Show, everyone. My name is Bernard Alvarez, and in case you've missed it, we are speaking with Maria Wheatley, and she is really, really giving us a relearning, and I am so grateful that she is on today, and we were able to reschedule our time with her. Welcome back, Maria.
Hi.
We've been covering a lot about Stonehenge, and I want to thank you for really, really feeding our minds and giving us alternative understanding and a deeper understanding of that monument. But there are also many monuments, of course, throughout the UK and throughout Ireland, and respectfully around Stonehenge itself or close to it. There is another monument called the Cursus monument, and I don't know really anything about this particular monument. Can you share with us what is the Cursus monument?
Yeah, sure. I imagine we all know what Stonehenge looks like. We all have the archetypal image, don't we, of the lintel stone circle. Well, now imagine that you're looking to the north, and you're looking about a mile in front of you. We're just under that, actually, about 3/4 of a mile. Very visible in front of Stonehenge. Now imagine earthworks, and by that I mean like blocks of chalk being built up and then covered in earth, but rising to about 6 or even 10 feet tall, stretching for 2 miles across the landscape in front of Stonehenge, and about sort of 30 to 40 feet wide, yet this huge colossal earthwork, again, gleaming chalk white, but with no entrance whatsoever,
Huh.
So archaeologists, just like they say about the King's Chamber, for instance, it's all about death rites. It was for death, It was for processional ways. Well, how do you get in there? Do you climb up 10 feet of chalk and then slide down the other side? I mean, it's physically impossible. And a lot of archaeologists really realize that now. They just don't know what the Cursus is about. Now, my late father did some very good surveys of the Cursus, because sadly nothing really exists of it today. It got ploughed out after the Second World War, because England really couldn't feed itself, and a lot of monuments went under the plough to get more arable crops growing. Very unfortunate. But nonetheless, what's intriguing about the Cursus monument is in the near center of that monument, and bear in mind it is 2 miles long, there is an outpouring of much higher gamma radiation than anywhere else in the environment. So you go to the near center of that monument, and there's trace elements of a large amount of gamma radiation. So whatever happened at the Cursus, we think there's that trace element of radiation left behind, because you go to what's called a control zone, like you take a reading from one part, and then you have to have a control to see, what the background count is on a normal level. And it's normal everywhere else except that one point in that Cursus monument. I think our ancestors could, as this might sound a bit outlandish, but knew how to, cultivate atomic power.
Oh, it doesn't sound outlandish at all. Not at least not to someone like myself. I give them great credit in their knowledge and experience. Can you tell us a little bit about? You explained a bit how it's 2 miles long. Now, when you say it's 2 miles long, they were literally just blocks of stone. I'm trying to visualize it.
Blocks of chalk, like
Okay.
If you go beneath the ground at Stonehenge or in the west of England, it's solid chalk.
Right.
Yeah, solid chalk. It's chalk bedrock, and you can break the chalk bedrock. It's difficult. I mean, if they're just supposed to allegedly have antlers to break this up, well, it's just ridiculous, because they made chalk blocks. It's a bit like big bricks, if you will. Yeah. So imagine lots of big bricks built up over 2 miles, creating a monumental structure that was vast and big and wide and long, with no entrance whatsoever. So I doubt whether that was for humans, because if it was meant for humans to interact with, you would have a door, you'd have an entrance, you'd have a causeway.
And now, I'm reading a little bit that there were ditches with water. Was there water running alongside it or underneath it, or?
Quite possibly, because in the prehistoric period, there was a lot more water in the water table, for example. So you didn't have to go down too far to get what's called, hit the water table. So the ditches each side probably, in all probability, contained a lot of water. There was a lot of water around the Stonehenge environ as well. It seems like water and ancient sites go hand in hand.
Mm-hmm.
And water is a very good conductor if you are making a kind of energetic force, be that with kind of a DC signal, electrical signal in the ground. Water is, like copper, a great conductor.
That's exactly what I was thinking. With you saying that the center was generating gamma radiation and we have water running alongside, I could imagine some type of giant battery or something. And again, it leads me to wonder, what were they using this for? What kind of energy were they trying to emit?
Well, exactly. I mean, that is the $1,000,000 question. I mean, we can surmise what they were doing with it. Which is very difficult. But I do think that particular monument could have been storing whatever Stonehenge and its surrounding monuments were generating. It's because, like anything, you make power, with coal, with atomic power, with wind energy. You have to store it, don't you? You tend to store it somewhere. And I think that's where the role of the Cursus came into being. It's a very enigmatic, it's a big anomaly in the landscape. And not a lot of archaeologists or people talk about it.
No, they don't. I mean, you never see, you see T-shirts and posters and everything, desktop backgrounds of Stonehenge. You never hear about the Cursus monument. And, I can't help, you just said that perhaps it was a storage container from Stonehenge for the energy being raised in Stonehenge. It just amazes me how, it's as if they were, and again, I'm just speculating that they were building a giant energy, I don't want to say reactor, but power plant or something, because you have to, again, we have to consider, what was the relationship between Stonehenge and the Cursus monument, and exactly how close is the first portion of it to Stonehenge?
Well, literally just about half a mile away.
Oh, really? Okay.
Oh, it's right in front. Well, if you're looking north, if you're stood at Stonehenge and you look north, you would have seen the Cursus monument. So the Cursus is, quite much a bit older than Stonehenge. Again, you see, there hasn't been any carbon dating, and carbon dating can be quite inaccurate anyway. But they can't really date these monuments, and that's why they say, 3000 BC. But again, that what little carbon evidence has come out of the Cursus, again, you're stretching back to 10,000 years in what's called the Megalithic period. So again, these monuments could be far, far older.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And I can't help but wonder again. A question pops in the mind: why would they create the Cursus monument prior to Stonehenge, if that is indeed the way the aging has been revealed?
It's very difficult to answer that question in all honesty. But maybe they were kind of setting up the foundations for Stonehenge, because Stonehenge came in phases. I described phase one with the 56 blue stones. Yeah. Then about 500 years later, they took out the blue stones and built the Stonehenge that we're so familiar with today, with the gigantic sarsen stones, the lintel stone circle. And so that was, again, a gradual building. It was like a building program. In fact, Stonehenge, from like the Cursus time to its end of the building construction, was 1,000 years.
Oh my goodness! Wow.
Yeah, it's 1,000 years. I mean, could you imagine if we carried a project that was started 1,000 years ago? That's like me carrying out something in 1066 here in England.
Yeah, yeah.
We just don't have long-term vision, and that's one thing the Stonehenge people had. They had long-term vision.
Unbelievable. And I mean, talk about dedication. And not only that, they must have really seen or understood the the greatness of dedicating themselves to something that would take this long, and what it would mean for their civilization once it was completed.
Exactly.
Yeah. Uh,
Exactly. They were building for the future. They were building for themselves.
hmm
But more importantly, they were building for their descendants, the future humanity, if you will. Because when you're talking about a 1,000-year project, it's just, we can't even think about it, because all we think about, for politicians, and we're not in their league, they're all mad, but
mm
they only think 4 years ahead.
hmm
So, the Stonehenge people were really futuristic. And a real part of what powers up an ancient site is what's called a type of earth energy that is called a geospiral. And I mentioned earlier the two types of water, yeah?
Yeah.
Well, you see, a geospiral, just imagine a spiral pattern in the ground. Water diviners for centuries, have recognized that a spiral pattern is the harmonic surface pattern. That's what you can dowse or detect, is emitted because of a particular type of underground water, an aquifer, but not an aquifer that most people are familiar with. For example, geologists, quite rightly so, inform us the aquifers are filled up because of rainwater. And in the UK, we know about rain. And it fills up the aquifers, and it fills up those underground streams, That's right. There's another type of aquifer, and that's where it's filled up with water generated chemically by the earth herself. That's like yin water, and
Wow.
the rainwater is considered yang water. Now, yin water is always, throughout the history of water diviners rather, is said to be all healing. Now, when that breaks through to the surface, and it's predominantly yin water generated by the earth, that's why a spring is said, oh, that's healing, that's sacred. Where it's bored down in history, that's where your holy well comes from, because it's being holy and healing. So there's two types of water.
That's very, very fascinating, and we're definitely going to talk more about that in the second hour. I'm very interested in more of the sites that are around, not only Stonehenge but around England and Ireland. You are going to be leading a particular program or a tour around the area, around to these sites with Gary Evans. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. We're kicking off July the 15th in the UK, then going to some very unusual sites in Ireland. So 1 week is kind of, one part of the tour is the UK, and the second part is Ireland. We're looking at very diverse monuments as well, and very diverse points in history in both countries.
Now, let me ask you a question of, as far as, let's say, starting with the UK, are all of these ancient megaliths, monuments, temples, are they all basically built around the same era, or is it scattered throughout early history with the UK?
That's a really good question. If we go with what we know, then they do appear to have, like, literally suddenly been built, around the same time. You get a few stone circles and megalithic temples that are later, but generally speaking, they seem to have been devised, constructed, and engineered at the same time. Which, when you think about it, that's an awful lot of people constructing these monuments at the same time. You've got to feed these people, so agriculture would have been good at that time. And so, yes, they were all geared up to do this particular task.
And are there specific areas or cities or towns that you find more of a cluster, like Avebury, Glastonbury? Are there specific specific areas, towns, or villages that you find more than others?
Yeah, in the southwest of England, you find a lot of stone circles. That's a place called Cornwall. You have a lot of stone circles in Cornwall made of granite, which is very difficult to move and very heavy. Then as you kind of come up the country, you come to places like Stonehenge, and then let's move north now. You have a lot of stone circles in the north of England, and then high in Scotland you have some fantastic megalithic sites, one of which is called Callanish, And on the Isles of Orkney, you have some very large stone circles there. So they were all across the UK, and a lot have gone, sadly, like I mentioned, underneath the plough, taken for builder material in the 1800s. But we can still record in this country now 900 stone circles. That's just a fraction of what was.
Oh, wow, that is quite a bit.
Mm.
I mean,
That's what I mean. Oh, sorry.
no, I was just going to say, in the United States, I think we have two, you know, one in, what is it, one in Connecticut, I think, and another one in Miami, and that's about the only ones that we have here. And you can't help but wonder if there is some kind of connection between, again, the technologies. I don't know if you have done any investigation into the Miami Circle, and that was, I believe they said it was 5,000 or 6,000 years old. Before the Tequestas, I believe, which was one of the oldest cultures here. And I really don't know. I guess Hugh Newman would know more about the one in Connecticut. But again, it's just fascinating that it's again, you know, just like pyramids, it's a technology that seems to go across oceans and is a global understanding at that point of history. And I wonder if all of them, you talked about how these sites were basically created and engineered during the same era for the UK. I wonder if it's the same with these other sites here in the United States and around the world as well.
But it seems each, country has its own unique style of ancient monuments, almost, broadly speaking. I mean, in the States, you had, an awful lot of mounds, didn't you? I mean, you had Ohio had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of mounds, all built to a particular pattern. They were very much layered, weren't they? They were like organic and inorganic layers in Ohio, for instance. So, I mean, it's almost like that's the mound building part of the world, yeah?
Yes.
And then in other parts of the world, you have stone circles. In other parts of the world, you have pyramids. So it's like they were tapping in and harnessing the energy through the structure that they knew could harness that the most easiest and best way known to their culture.
Very true. And let me ask you specifically about Ireland. You're going to be going to Ireland as well. What are some of the sites that you're going to be investigating over there?
Yeah, Ireland is fantastic for ancient sites. I mean, it has some of the best in the world. One key place is called Newgrange, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
And Newgrange is, again, labelled a long barrow, for a burial mound, rather, for, literally for remains, although not many remains have been found. And if they were, the few that have been could have been secondary interments, put in much, much later than when it was actually constructed. And Newgrange is famous for its midwinter alignment. It has a kind of box in the roof called a roof box, which only at the time when the sun rises at the winter solstice, it's laser-like. It sends this beam of white light right the way down the long, long corridor of this so-called burial mound. And within this burial mound, you have some very large bowls, big stone bowls, and they're large and they're heavy. And again, the archaeologists inform us they were for cremation remains, although no cremation remains have been associated with that type of burial anywhere else in the UK. Now, and these bowls seem to be placed again on Pacific Earth energy types of patterns that we'll have a look at in the second part of this show. So this burial mound is quite intriguing. It has solar alignments. It has these very strange large stone bowls within the structure, and it was finished off on the front piece that you could see when you stand outside of Newgrange in a beautiful white crystal finish. So these glinted in the sun. They were like diamonds. They could be seen for miles.
Oh, wow. We're actually going to be speaking with James Swagger, who researches that. I was wondering if you know him or of his work.
Yeah, I've heard of him, yes, and he has done a lot of research into such monuments, and this is what's needed because if it isn't for independent researchers, then you just get a standard broad
Yes.
explanation. It's death rights, and that's
Yes.
whether it's the King's Chamber or anywhere. That's the standard explanation. That simply is not the case when you look at the complex geometry alone of these monuments. They tend to incorporate harmonic mathematical numbers, for instance. They're very complex. And some of the inner chambers, for example, of other places we're going to go in Ireland called Sligo, they're renowned to have very good acoustic properties, for instance. So, they were building in all these different kind of layers of understanding in these monuments that we're only really kind of figuring out. People like James and myself, we're kind of refiguring it out what they were being used for.
I can't help but again make the connection. I know that he has made a connection with the Dogon and their technology, and I'm wondering if well, we talked a little bit about Stonehenge, but as far as these other sites, what are their astronomical alignments like? We talked about the Earth alignment and the latitude and whatnot, and the sun, maybe, the alignment with the sun and the solstices. But have you seen any evidence as far as constellation alignment?
Well, yeah, I mean, James is going to be one of our guides actually in
Oh,
Ireland. So,
wonderful.
yeah, he's going to have a wealth of like local information as well. Well, again, with the astronomical side, people have been so focused on the sun and the moon that they're only just re-exploring the kind of celestial and stellar relationships between monuments. So again, that's good ground for new research because people have been looking at the monuments through the same eyes all the time, and I think it will be found, like clusters of stars like the Pleiades. They have intimate relationship with some of the monuments in the UK. Again, some burial mounds, one of which is called West Kennet Long Barrow. And then, stars like Sirius, and, it's rising on July the 4th, for instance. They all have their own alignments to them. And I think, as time goes on, we'll be able to realize that it was probably even more than that. It was kind of galactic alignments. I know there's some researchers over here in the UK that are looking beyond just the stars.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think it's all different layers that we're just about to uncover. And when these two things come into harmony, like the Earth energies, to, let's say, for example, the alignment of Sirius, that's when the two become one, and that's when the monument becomes empowered and becomes a power place.
Yeah, I can't imagine how well how wonderfully resonant a place can be when there is so much interplay. Not only with again, we talked about the Earth grids, or the sun, or the moon, or even the stars. When we start really aligning with the galactic energy lines, we were lucky enough to interview a couple of the Dogon tribe, and they talk about something about the inner relationship between planets and galaxies, and how apparently their technology understood this. And I look forward to hearing as we uncover, like you said, the more we dig through the layers of all of this, it's just unimaginable. All the information we're going to finally understand when we get to that place. We're going to be taking a short break. Oh, we still have a few more seconds, actually. But in the meantime, tell us again where people can get information on this tour going through the UK, the ancient sites, and Ireland.
Yeah, there's two websites. There's mine that's got a bit of information on, which is www.theaveryexperience.co.uk. And then there's Gary's website, which has booking forms and that type of thing on it, and that's called Infinite Connections. So you can have a look at both those sites and explore all the different sites that we'll be going on. There's like little
Wonderful
pictures you can click on and that sort of thing.
All right. Well, we're going to be taking a short break in just a second, and when we return, we're going to be talking more about the water and ley lines and dowsing, and we'll be right back.
You're listening to Revolution Radio.
Say yes to a new paradigm of thriving, self-mastery, self-governance, and expanded consciousness. Now is the time to step out of the old and into the new. Move beyond your comfort zone and into your extraordinary potential. Elevate with your host, Siobhan Cerisi of the Humanity Transcending Show, every Thursday, 12 to 2 p.m. Eastern Time on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com.
From Amman, Jordan, and streaming globally across the World Wide Web, catch The Fetch every Saturday at 10 o'clock a.m. Eastern Time for Inside the Eye Live, intelligent media for the politically aware. Intriguing interviews, live chat, lively discussion, and more. That's Inside the Eye Live, intelligent media for the politically aware every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock a.m. Eastern on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com.
Now you can share the topics that drive the discussions of your favorite talk shows with TalkStream Live's topic-driven talk radio. List and promote real-time talk radio topics, or post the topics that you want to hear. Hot topics are tweeted and retweeted, and include simple click-to-listen audio links. The future of talk radio is topic-driven talk radio. Available now at TalkStreamLive.com.
The finder of lost children and missing persons. Monique Lassan. Surveillance civil and criminal investigations. I investigate.
No, I am the chosen one.
Do not underestimate the power of good, and do not dismiss the strength of the child.
Yes, every Thursday afternoon on Revolution Radio, come join our very own Eye Investigatrix, Monique Lassan, with her Private Eye X-Files. Private Eye X-Files, every Thursday from 2 to 4 p.m. Eastern Time on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com.
I realize it's very hard for you to take in. But it's your destiny to find the golden child.
And now, back to your host, Bernard Alvarez.
Welcome back to the Just Bernard Show here on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. We are speaking with Maria Wheatley today. We have just spent the last hour covering Stonehenge and many of the sacred sites in the UK, and we started dabbling a little bit in Ireland. Maria will be doing a tour of these sacred sites in the UK and Ireland, or I'm sorry, England and Ireland, and that's going to be in July. I'm sorry, Maria, is that correct?
Yeah, July the 15th to the 28th.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. And we have posted the website links. If you're on the chat, you can click on that to get more information. We're going to shift the discussion a little bit different topic right now. Maria, you are a second generation water diviner. Can you tell us a little bit what that means and a little bit of what you learned from your father, I guess?
Yeah, sure. Water divining comes under the kind of title over here called dowsing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and to douse for anything, it could be underground water, yin or yang water. It could be, for instance, a ley line, whatever. You would use a dowsing instrument, and your dowsing instrument could be your traditional Y-shaped hazel rod,
Mm-hmm.
or it could be, as most people use these days, like an L-shaped metal copper mixed with nickel rod. And that's what I use. I tend to use the copper nickel rod. It's a really good conductor, and it picks up on things quite easily. Or you can use what's called a pendulum. They're your dowsing instruments that can detect things. And all you need to douse for anything is you set your intent. So if my intent, for example, is dowsing for underground water, that's what I'm suggesting to my rod in my mind all of the time. If I'm dowsing for ley line, that's my intent.
Mm-hmm.
So you can detect anything, really. Find lost objects, car keys, house keys, with a dowsing rod, for instance. So it's a good tool. It can detect things in the land.
Yes, absolutely, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, there seems to be here in the U.S. a bit of resurgence in dowsing with farmers trying to dig wells and find wells, and it's a part of. I know here in the U.S. it's a part of our history, as I'm sure it is in England as well. Your father was also a diviner, a water diviner?
Yeah, he was a water diviner and a kind of earth energies expert as well. So he would douse for the both, like what I do as well. So yeah, he doused for a lot of different kind of energy patterns at sacred sites, and he was lucky enough as well to have inherited all the unpublished surveys, archaeological surveys and earth energy surveys of another master dowser called Guy Underwood. My late father also got taught different techniques by Chinese geomans that were then living in Hong Kong.
Oh my goodness! Wow, that's very, very lucky of him to have that type of education and passing it down to you as well. The Now, when it comes to dowsing and earth energy patterns and ley lines, you talked a little bit about, but not on the show, but on I guess on your website, how these ley line networks emit negative energy ions, magnetism, and plasma balls of light. Can you explain to us what are negative ions and plasma balls of light? I've seen them myself, but some people may not know what that means.
Sure. Well, negative ions can be tested for. I mean, if you're around a waterfall, for example, or underground water, you will always naturally in the air have negative ions. Imagine how you feel. You know, there's after a thunderstorm, the air always feels good.
Yeah.
That's because it is full of negative ions. And just before a thunderstorm, the air is full of positive ions, rather, that really can give you a headache and make you feel pretty lousy.
Mm-hmm.
So negative ions are very good for us. They give us a feel-good factor. They can be quite healing. For instance, and they're kind of intimately associated with some ley lines and earth energy patterns. And also with ley lines, a lot of people in the southwest of England continually see plasma balls of light. They're often called just balls of light, balls for short, or earth lights. And these earth lights seem to rise out of a ley line or an earth energy pattern, if you will. They tend to be amber-colored commonly, although you do get derivatives. You get, like lights, just white-colored ones or blue ones. But they seem to rise out of the ground and seem to follow in a linear fashion. So they're often considered closely related with fault lines or with ley lines and energy patterns and sacred sites and crop circles.
Oh, I'm sure, yeah. The only place I have physically seen, I guess what you would call plasma balls of light, have been on the beach. Is that a place that would be?
Oh, wow. I haven't heard of that, but that
Yeah.
sounds great.
Yeah, they were just all over the place, and we caught it
Wow.
on video. It was absolutely amazing. I wish I still had that video. But I saw it, and it was funny because it was during an event where there were lots of people, and all of a sudden these like balls of light started coming around, and we started videotaping it. And again, the reason why I remembered it is because when I was learning my esoteric teachings, my teacher always told me, go to the beach for negative ions. And I just can't help but wonder if that had something to do with the plasma balls.
I think you're probably very right there, actually. And again, they seem to have these associations with one another, which is quite interesting. What's interesting about your experience is there was a lot of people around, you say?
Yes, it was very interesting. Usually, yes, I've seen, usually it's nothing, nobody there. But I don't know if maybe it was a date or if it was a full moon or what it was.
That's really interesting. What a lot of people who have interacted with these balls of light say is that if you put your conscious intent and try and really focus, and as if you're communicating, telepathically with these balls of light, they do respond to your consciousness. I mean, I've experienced this myself.
Yeah.
So I was asking one ball of light, could you go to the left, please, to see if it could, understand my mind?
Mm-hmm.
And it did. It went to the left.
Oh, wonderful. I wonder, and I can't help but put the two together. We see and hear so much, especially in a UFO investigation about these balls of light. And I hear the same thing with people, and I'm not, I don't know, I really don't know what the relation is. But again, let's say, for example, in East City Ranch, we'll hear of people looking up and they see these balls of light, and again they're doing the same thing, asking it to move, and it moves or it blinks. I can't help but wonder if they're just cosmic balls of light that come down.
Well, there's I've spoken to Esoteric actually about these. It's quite intriguing.
Oh.
But what some researchers have found here from the Netherlands, actually, they've used just normal kind of video film to, like, when you see these balls of light come out the ground, to follow them and to kind of track them as best as one can, so to speak. And what they found was it comes out of the ground in kind of a light color, white, blue, or amber, and then they traced it all going up and up and up and up and up, way, way up high. Now, in crop circles, for example, if you just put, your camera on a tripod and start filming, and you play that film back, you're probably not going to see a lot. But what researchers from the Netherlands have found was slow it down, and you start to see these balls of light. They come out of the ground, and they're heading upwards.
Oh, wow. Okay. Very interesting. Very, very interesting. I love it. I find it very, very fascinating. This whole idea of balls of light and what they are. Are they consciousness? Are they energy? Are they a combination of conscious energy? I've never, and you see a lot of videos out on the internet and whatnot of people posting their, how they've captured these balls of light. And it's so funny because some people are scared of them, which I have no fear of them whatsoever. But, I can't help but wonder if they can be utilized, with healing, or if it's just, the earth and the universe trying to let us know that it's there or it's alive.
I think you're right. I think it's a combination, again, of, lots of different things. And I'm not frightened of them either. And I had a premonition once with these balls of light. And I just woke up one morning and thought, I've got to be at this place. And it happened to be on a ley line. I've got to go there in the evening. And I'm going to take my daughter, who's called Raven, with me. So we went off to see if anything would happen. I took my camera and I said to Raven, what time do you think this is going to kind of manifest? And she went, at sunset, Mum. And at sunset, it came out of the ground and hovered around us.
Oh, wow.
So I really feel once you make that connection to Gaia, once you make that connection to the earth, a relationship truly does start where you get a sense of where to be, when these type of things happen. And time again, I hear so many other people say this as well with their own life experiences, because that's what we've kind of lost in a way. We've lost the connection to our one mother, the planet upon which we live. And so many people now are reconnecting to Gaia through the ancient sites. In their own back gardens sometimes, by just connecting again with the earth. And we need that to move forward holistically.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. I feel this is a part of our, we talk about, many of us, especially in the consciousness and truth movement and activism, when we talk about, the shift that's happening. And I thoroughly feel that one of the precursors of anyone's consciousness shift is to have that reconnection with Earth and with nature. And I don't mean, buying a home on a lake or moving to the mountain, which is what I did. I moved to the mountains, but going out and literally sensing the energy and connecting with it and allowing it to move through our bodies once again. I feel that, with modern society has literally pushed us away. Like you said, it's made us disconnect. We're so busy living in concrete jungles and working with technology and cell phones and computers and automobiles and planes and whatnot that and not to mention the environmental pollutants that don't necessarily help us with our connection. That I feel that is one of the layers of this consciousness expansion is reconnecting and remembering.
That's beautiful. Yeah, remembering. Because, this is in our DNA. All of the kind of, our ancestral wisdom, if you will, it's there to be tapped into. Because, again, you take people around ancient sites, and at particular points in those ancient sites, people start to remember similar things. Mm-hmm. And you could be from Australia or from America or from Canada. Now, that one particular stone, they see and resonate with the energy there, and they start to describe a time in history that's associated with that stone. So it's almost, you're so right, it's like remembering. And these sacred sites, from my perspective, they're like the trigger. They're like the kind of, kick up the butt that we need to reconnect and say, come on, we're here. This is the energetic backdrop here. Breathe it in. Feed it beneath your feet. Become one with it, because I'm a true believer that we can merge with the earth. Yeah, we can become one with the earth. And when that happens, that's an alchemic moment in anybody's lives. And it's like, wow, here I am. I'm living in Eden. Yeah, we have lots of electronic smog and things, but we can make this our Eden.
Mm-hmm. I definitely agree with that. Absolutely. And I guess to reconnect with the earth, one of the things that you do and teach about and talk about is the energy patterns and the ley lines. Can you tell our listeners a bit that may not know what are ley lines? And you use, like you said, you use dowsing to find them. Can you touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. Ley lines are basically a linear straight line. You can find them on a map, for example, on what we call an ordinary survey map here in the UK. And it's when 5 or more sacred sites are on that same linear alignment. That decrees, if you will, a ley line. Yeah, and that's like a topographical alignment. Mm-hmm. Now, in the UK, we have some very well documented ley lines. One of the most well documented is called the St. Michael ley line. Mm-hmm. It stretches from Cornwall on the western coast in southern England right the way through 300 miles. It courses to the eastern coast. Now, Avery, which I mentioned earlier, containing the world's largest stone circle, is right in the middle, bang smack in the middle of that ley line. So that ley line is very important. Also, an author here in the UK that was respected to be one of the UK's top geomancers was called John Michell. And John Michell calculated that ley line was once orientated perfectly to the Beltane, that's the old Druid word for the May Day sunrise. So on May the 1st, the sun would align. So John Michell suggested suggested that that was a man-made linear alignment.
Oh, okay. So perhaps they had put the sites there because of the sunrise?
The sunrise, and it somehow anchors in other forces. So you have that ley line. It can be just a topographical alignment with 5 or more sacred sites on it, yeah. But then in the 80s, two authors called Hamish Miller and Paul Broadhurst, they discovered that on that St. Michael ley line I've just described, with Avebury at its center, if you will, were two currents, magnetic, huge currents, like rivers entwining and coiling round the ley line.
Mm.
One was said to be quite gentle in its force, and one a bit kind of stronger. So they thought they were yin and yang energies of river. You know the symbol of the caduceus?
Yes.
Imagine that's like a
Yeah.
ley system. You've got the ley line, and you've got two coiling energy systems around them, and they kind of nicknamed them, if you will, Mary and Michael, like yin and yang currents associated with that ley line. So not only do you have sacred sites on the ley line, you have sacred sites also aligned on either the yin or yang coiling energy forces that surround that ley line.
Oh, very interesting. Is that and I'm not sure if I'm correct in this, but is that what they call dragon lines?
That's right. That's
Okay.
your archetypal dragon line.
Okay, that's what I had heard. Okay.
And in China, they were collectively called Lung Mei, the power in the land, the cosmic dragon's breath, and wherever they crossed was deemed to be especially auspicious, reserved only for the emperor's palace or tomb or monuments.
Oh, so this has been known for quite a while then.
This has been documented in written records dating back to 2220 BC in ancient China.
Wow.
And it's called Feng Shui or Feng Shui, depending if you say tomato, I say tomato.
Right.
You know. But yeah, so it's been very widely documented. But like I said earlier, in the UK, sadly, we were a bardic race and we never wrote anything down. But in ancient China, it was very well documented, and they would manipulate the flow of the magnetic force, which they called qi, for example. If qi flows too fast along a straight line, that's considered not good. Yeah. So you know, in ancient China, they don't have straight roofs. They tend to have like a horseshoe bow roof.
Yes.
That's because they don't want the energy to flow too fast along the tops of their houses. Everything must curve like a voluptuous woman. Everything must meander like a river. And then when it does meander, that's when you have auspicious qi. That's when you have a good environment in which to live.
Fascinating. I get it now. I really understand now as far as the architecture. I wondered if there was something behind that, and it makes complete sense that it's the energy flow.
It's all down to keeping the flow of qi flowing correctly. And then in ancient China, for example, the concept of the esoteric center is paramount in any design. That could be the esoteric center of Stonehenge, the esoteric center of a country. And John Michel pointed out that Peking, modern-day Beijing, was centered in the near center of China. It is esoteric center. It's the heart and the soul of the land.
Oh, very good. And I would think that would allow the energy to flow better?
Well, exactly, because you're then on two like dragon lines, as you described them so accurately earlier. If they're on a crossing point at a junction, and you have underground water, especially the yin aquifers beneath you, that's considered very auspicious. In fact, just recently, a few years ago in New Scientist magazine, some geologists discovered that the biggest underground water source in the world is beneath Beijing.
Oh, wow. Very interesting. So they knew what they were doing.
Oh, absolutely. And in ancient China, they take it one step further and bring these concepts into the mundane world. And they say, you know, money and wealth equates with water. The two words are interchangeable. So beneath their country, you have an awful lot of, sacred underground water.
Yes, absolutely. It's unfortunately it's a practice I don't do anymore. But someone of Eastern descent had told me to keep a fountain of flowing water in front of my business or my home, and that
Yeah.
is why you'll see many Chinese restaurants have an aquarium when you first walk in.
Yeah. Water is money, and you must keep it flowing. So that's why you have a fountain. It must never stagnate, for example. So you keep it, flowing, and that's good chi. It generates good chi.
And we're finding this, and or you find using dowsing and divining the flowing water underneath these lines.
Oh yeah, that's the spiral pattern I described earlier. You see a spiral pattern of energy, which you can find with dowsing by just setting your intent to find it. You literally say to your dowsing rod, "Show me the nearest geospiral," and you just repeat that like a mantra in your mind, and your rod will waver and eventually point you in a given direction. And basically, you just follow that rod until you get what's called found. Yeah. And when you douse a geospiral, the rod will always take you, quite conveniently so, to the center. So you know what you're divining, and that's considered good for health. You live above a geospiral, and that is particularly good for health. It emits lots of negative ions. It is life enhancing. The ancients knew this. Whereas if you live above underground yang water, that's considered carcinogenic. That's a big no-no. It's not good to live above an underground stream of yang water, but it is good to live above a geospiral. And I always say to people, could you imagine if we integrated just a little bit of ancient wisdom into our modern day lives, and our hospitals were placed above these healing patterns, and the places that we live and share communally?
Oh, absolutely. And just to remind our listeners, because we spoke about this almost an hour ago, the yin water is the water that is created from Mother Earth?
Yeah, it's produced chemically deep
Right.
within Gaia. It's independent of rainfall. It
Correct.
forms its own aquifer system. It is completely independent of rainfall, although the two can mix together as they kind of come up to the surface.
Right,
And
right.
there's a great old tradition of when you bore yin water. It's once all the kind of chalk or dirt, if you will, is kind of washed out, and it's the pure water. You hold it up to the sunlight, and it glints like diamonds.
Oh, wow, beautiful. And this is the water that you said is associated with healing wells and whatnot as well.
Exactly. It's associated with all healing wells, all healing springs, and anything that is renowned to be medicinal when it comes to water. And there is certainly evidence now emerging from Stonehenge that these people were drinking this type of water.
Okay. And apparently there must be something to that because we're seeing, I mean, we see it in spas around the world where people will just build a structure around these earth wells. I come from Florida, and we have many springs and spas in Central Florida, particularly where these people they know and they go there for the healing and they build these structures. Of course, they make you pay to get in and take a bath in it or drink it, but people come from all over the world to participate in that.
Well, exactly. You're so right. Yeah, people recognize that this particular water has particular medicinal qualities, and they place a structure on it just to say, well, this is the place. And we have various places like that in the UK and indeed all around the world. So yeah, the ancients were very aware of good water and not so good water, if you will. So they were tapping into this water supply. And in ancient esoteric kind of Templar traditions, for instance, and a Masonic tradition, is whatever you place above that spiral pattern, that enhances the object or the water. So you go to an old medieval church, for example, in the UK or Europe or France or wherever, and the font tends to be above that spiral pattern, as if it can harmonically change the quality of the water by being placed above that spiral pattern.
Oh, wow, that's fascinating. And unfortunately, I can't help but wonder now with modern sewage systems, how many of us live over sewage running water, you know?
That's our modern ways. It's yes, wouldn't be very good.
Yes, I would think so. That's probably why people have to go to and seek out these yin quality waters. And we have just a couple minutes left in the segment, but to touch just on the yang water. Now, the yang water you said is basic rainwater that is collected in an aquifer.
Yeah, and which could have been, in the Jurassic era.
Yes.
Some rainwater fell a long, long time ago, basically. But yeah, that's kind of produced through, the climatic conditions, and it falls and it's collected in the underground streams and the aquifers, rainwater.
Right, right. And again, I'm just curious on a personal level because, again, in Florida, coming from Miami, we lived on top of something called the Biscayne Aquifer. And I just can't help but wonder if that's why people are so crazy down there.
I'll take your word on that.
Yeah. But the good news is there are negative ions coming off the ocean, so that hopefully balances things out.
Yeah, definitely.
But seriously, I would think that there would be different effects living over an aquifer versus living over a the spiral type water.
Oh, definitely. And in the UK, I don't honestly know about the USA or Canada, for example, but in the UK, all of the aquifers have been geologically mapped so that you know where you lived in your early years through your isotope enamel that I was talking about earlier, for example. So they're all mapped. All those type of yang and some of the yin aquifers are mapped, so we know where they are in these in the southwest and the north of England.
Right. Okay, I'm gonna have to look it up and see if we have it here. For I'm in Virginia now in the Appalachian Mountains. I wonder if they have that mapped out as well for us, and for those of you in Canada as well, Trevor, by all means. Now, you were talking a little bit, let's talk a little bit more about the healing properties and the documentation of it. And you cite that during the World War II, hundreds of people were healed from the yin water.
Yes, that's documented by the master dowser Guy Underwood just after the war. You see, in London, obviously the Blitz wiped out row after row of houses, and people didn't have anywhere to live. So what they did around what's called the Chislehurst Caves in Kent, a lot of people literally took to the galleries, the old dugout galleries and the old caves to live. They didn't have anywhere else to go. Yeah.
Right.
And what happened was it was found that the elderly people and people, even the young people that were ill or not feeling too well or had arthritis, that when they came out of the caves, a lot of people lived here long term. Yeah.
Excuse me, Maria, hold that thought. We're going to be taking a break in just a couple of seconds. So let's pick up where we left off. I'm sure people are going to be very fascinated to hear this. And we'll be back in just a couple of minutes.
Listening to Revolution Radio. Revolution Radio.
You don't see it, do you? How how close we are to absolute chaos? The sick ones are sitting on their fat asses, eating and drink themselves into a stupor, polluting the world without a second thought while it goes down the toilet. Nobody wants to do the nasty work. You know, the shit that we all just think about. Most good citizens are just along for the ride and then bitch and moan and complain about everything when it doesn't work out. Not me. Get it done.
Revolution Radio, where we do the nasty work. www.freedomslips.com.
And now, back to your host, Bernard Alvarez.
Welcome back to the Just Bernard Show as we wrap up this last segment with this wonderful 2 hours with Maria Wheatley. Before we went on the break, Maria was sharing with us some documentation that they have on the use of yin water, and I believe we left off at the Blitzkrieg, or the Blitz.
Yeah, that's right. During the Second World War, sadly, London was blitzed, and people took to living in the old cave systems, the galleries around Chislehurst in Kent. And they stayed down there for quite some time with their families, and, you know, obviously children can become ill, and elderly people have health issues such as arthritis and that type of thing. And it was found that when the people came out, you know, obviously after the World War had ceased, they came out, most of them were all cured of all of their ailments. They no longer had arthritis. Dental problems became a lot better. Their bones were healthier. So they came out very, very healthy. And it was then widely documented on the wireless then, you know, their kind of media network as it was then. And it was very widely documented. And master dowsers went to that area to kind of investigate and survey and explore. And yeah, they found that it was associated with that particular type of healing sacred yin water.
Oh, wow. Isn't that fascinating? I really am one who not only tries to practice, but tries to educate on the fact that, you know, energetic frequencies do a lot for healing, as well as raising our consciousness. And what a great example of that. That this here it is. This I guess the yin water generates some type of frequency that helps the body heal itself. Is that what you get out of it, Maria?
Well, yeah, because we've kind of took some frequency tests, actually, over these particular types of underground water, for instance, to see what's going on. And 9 times out of 10, under a kind of flowing geospiral pattern, it resonates to what's called the Schumann resonance. So it kind of becomes, you know, in sync with the Earth's heartbeat, if you will, the background Schumann resonance of about kind of 7 to 10 hertz. So, yeah, all the kind of healing spots of underground water resonate to that. But the underground yang streams, which all dowsers and water diviners say are not good to live above, they can emit really high hertz cycles, like, you know, 87 to 101. That's not good to live above. So, yeah, you can do this with dowsing or take, you know, equipment, and time again, the two collate.
Yes, okay. And also, could you expand a little bit on the Schumann resonance? I know very little about it. I've understood it a little bit. Could you expand on that a little bit for me?
Well, yeah, just, I mean, the Schumann resonance was discovered in the 1950s by, you know, Dr. Schumann, and Schumann resonance, it's named after him. And it's a bit like, you know, if you imagine the Earth and its ionosphere enveloping around, the kind of sound background resonance frequency that can be measured in hertz is generated by the Earth. And that's always around 7 to about 10 hertz. That's what's likened to the Earth's heartbeat. Anything that's around 7 to 10 hertz, that resonates with the Schumann background resonance of our planet.
Huh.
Yeah, now there was an investigator called Robert Beck, or Robert Becker, forgive me, I can't remember if it was Beck or Becker, He did a lot of research into the Schumann resonance and healing, and you're talking about frequencies and healings. And he basically put people wired up to an EEG machine that registers your brain waves, yeah?
Yeah.
Because when we're in alpha mode, say you're meditating and you've got your eyes closed and you're basically really chilled out and you're trying to, change your brain frequencies through meditation, your brain naturally goes to about 5 to 7 hertz. That's meditation frequency, yeah? And what Robert Becker found was when he wired people up, when they received healing from the healer, there was a flash moment of 7 hertz. When the healer gave out healing, it was flashed up on his monitor, 7 hertz. So when we receive or give healing, it's quite often completely in sync with the Earth's heartbeat, the Schumann resonance.
That is absolutely fascinating. And personally speaking, I can't help but associate that, with the phenomenon of Reiki healing. I myself am a Reiki master. And I can't help but notice that even after I do a healing session, I feel so much better. And yes, I'm in a meditative state when I'm doing that, and I can see now a little bit of the correlation there. Is that fair to say?
Oh yeah, I mean, like I say, according to his research, when healing is given or received, or we're in these kind of earth energy patterns, and some lays and lay systems I described earlier, they're all beaten in harmony with that background Schumann resonance. Let's say 7 hertz for argument's sake. Now, intriguingly, it was found when you interact with that energy. So let's say you're just walking and you're walking towards the center of a monument that's sited above that geospiral pattern. Your brain waves are coming into sync with the Schumann resonance. You'll feel more relaxed. You're coming into harmony with these centers. That's, one part of the ancient sites. They just resonate good frequencies, healthy frequencies.
Right. And you were saying at the beginning of the show, you were talking a bit about the frequency that some of these monuments emit. And I believe, did you say, I believe you said some of them resonate at 18 hertz?
Yeah, they're the megaliths. They tend to resonate around about 18 hertz. And this is all, just out of our audible hearing ability. But, if we look to some indigenous cultures, such as the Aborigines of Australia, they always spoke about song lines.
Yes.
Because if they could hear something. And this is what I really do believe, that, our ancient ancestors heard these frequencies, especially the ones just below audible sound. And that's what attracted them to, erecting the stones. And perhaps, they just gave off this song, like the Aborigines say, the song lines and the dream chime. It will take you somewhere. It changes your consciousness.
You have you heard of something called or a I don't know if you want to call it a monument or whatnot, but there's a site, and I believe it's here in the U.S. It might be in Ohio, where they call it the Singing Rocks, and it's like a pile of big stones, and you can tap them, and they start to resonate a certain sound.
Oh, wow.
Like the whole mound starts to do it. And there's like videos on YouTube everywhere. Anybody could look it up. Singing rocks or singing stones. I forgot what it is. But it's very fascinating because you see people just giggling. They start giggling. I guess that's the first reaction to seeing these rocks making this sound or this tone. It's very interesting.
That is fascinating, actually, because it's like they're completely active, and that's why people are hearing them. Because, we must remember sites like Avebury and Stonehenge are sadly ruinous. They've been taken away for building material in Avebury and Stonehenge. Now, put that monument back to its original design canon, if you will. Again, is it going to be like these singing rocks? Tap it, something happens.
Yes.
Because once something retains that circular shape, that in itself generates energy, the circular shape. So I think that's where those singing stones could have been, quite common throughout the megalithic world.
Yes, that would make sense. That would definitely make sense. And you say that that most of these stone circles do emanate this particular frequency.
Yes, and it's not just myself that's picked up on that. Reading University did some very interesting tests about 4 or 5 years ago at Stonehenge. And I was talking earlier, we all have an image of Stonehenge in our minds. It's that archetypal and iconic, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it has gaps in between each stone, obviously like a toothless grin, as it's sometimes described as. But what they found with their equipment when they did their experiments was the sound. They played a background noise called pink noise, which they could record upon. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So they used a background noise and they recorded any sounds being made at Stonehenge. And what they found was that the sound that was generated within that monument was not going outside of the monument, but stayed within it, despite the gaps in the stones.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah, that was Reading University, and they found that background frequency was between 18 and 25 hertz. It would fluctuate sometimes, like spike and then come back down. Mm-hmm. And that's what they found, and they really didn't expect to find that, because what they thought was sound would go through the monument, as indeed logic would decree.
Right. And I can't help it. It brings my mind, my thoughts to this new. I don't want to say that it's new, but we're seeing now a lot of alternative practitioners are using something, and I forgot what it's called. I want to. It's not biorhythm, but it's bio something, and it's all over. You can find it anywhere, and supposedly they've discovered the different hertz at different levels can induce different states of consciousness, or it can aid you in healing, or aid you in time travel. I mean, all these big ideas are being put out there. I wish I could remember the name of the process or the technology. But is there? I guess my question to you is there a scale that has been figured out as to what a hertz can do what for the human body or the human mind?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I mean, from the moment the kind of Schumann resonance was discovered in the 1950s, you had a chap. I think he was called second name Lewis, and he was one of the first to correlate. Our brainwaves operate from, really fast when we're mentally doing a task or something. We're in gamma. We're about 25 hertz, figuring things out. And the lower it comes down to alpha, like I was mentioning earlier, your alpha brainwaves is much, much slower. So anything that a field that we walk in or interact with, be that a machine, be that a standing stone, that kind of chucks out, if you will, and pulsates out that hertz frequency, your brain is going to become in sync with it. Yeah? So what we found with some of our tests on very wide earth currents, like the two yin-yang rivers that entwine the ley line I was discovering, we looked at one, they're coined Mary, the female yin current associated with that ley system. And what we found was, let's say it's about 6 feet wide for argument's sake. On the outer edges, its hertz frequency was about 25, but as you walk into the center of that earth energy current, it triggers alpha brain relaxation. You walk out again, it re-triggers and fires your mind up again. So I fully agree with this system that you're describing, that anything that kind of can trigger our brains has to be beneficial, especially if it can get us into like kind of the alpha and theta brainwaves, which have always been decreed to be very healing and beneficial.
Yes, and actually I just found it. It's called binaural beats.
Binaural beats, yeah.
Like oral, like aura. But
right.
I've used it before, and it actually does help me with meditation. They say it's done, and I wonder how you would how you feel about this. Basically, they have 1 hertz going in one ear, and 1 hertz frequency going in the other ear, and it's supposed to generate a third hertz frequency.
That's really interesting, actually. It makes sense.
Yeah, I found it very fascinating. I'd love to learn more about it. Maybe we could find someone who knows about this. But it's very interesting how if you hear it, I guess going in one ear and the other going in another ear, that the brain creates a third tone or whatnot.
Well, that is really interesting because we're reacting to those notes, aren't we?
Yeah.
And co-creating at the same time with the kind of understanding of that. And that could trigger some kind of like different level of consciousness or experience, I would imagine.
I would think so, and to bring it back to what you're talking about, I can't help but wonder if we will end up eventually finding something like that in some of these sacred sites, where one stone emits one frequency and another emits another to generate a third.
That's really interesting, and you really triggered something in me. So I just want to go out and find it now. Hey, I'm inspired by that.
Again, the relationship between these sites, and it just, again, it goes back to everything that we've been talking about, how, like, let's say the Cursus monument is connected to Stonehenge, and how it's connected to the sun and connected to the stars and connected to the galaxy, and how all of these reverberations can really probably create something completely different.
Yeah, and I really think you've my mind is just going with what you said. So right, this third thing, and I think that could be what the monuments are about. It's not just what they're emitting; it's how we're experiencing that and how we're co-creating that.
Right, right. You're staring at that electromagnetic reader, aren't you? I'm grabbing it. I'm going outside.
Hey, yeah, see, I'm off out to Avery now.
Speaking of which, I didn't have the opportunity to ask you. Where are you right now in the UK?
I live in a very old 12th century market town called Marlborough, which is about sort of 10 minutes away from Avery and about sort of 15 minutes away from Stonehenge. And about a second or two away from crop circle country. So I'm in the middle of crop circle and megalithic land. It's fantastic.
Oh, how wonderful for you and for your work especially. Wonderful.
Yeah, because there's some, great monuments, and you meet, more importantly as well, great people, and you listen to their experiences and why they came and what their life journey was and what they've got from places like Avebury and Stonehenge. And more and more and more people are literally, like we were discussing earlier, they're reconnecting. And when they make that reconnection, their lives truly change.
Yeah, absolutely. We didn't have a moment to talk about Avebury. Can you tell us a little bit what's so special about Avebury?
Avebury is wonderful. Avebury is wonderful because unlike Stonehenge, which is governed by English Heritage and the National Trust, you can't go in there freely. Like touch the stones, lie by the stones, sing for the stones, or whatever you want to do. You're organized to go around in a kind of fashion, and you pay to get in there. Avebury is free. You don't have to pay any money to go to Avebury. You can touch the stones. You can interact with the stones. You can go there at midnight or for dawn. And that's the fantastic thing about Avebury. So it's great for researchers such as myself. Like I said a couple of times, it contains the world's largest stone circle, a massive stone circle containing 100 gigantic megaliths, which were, taken from about 4 or 5 miles away, sometimes even possibly a bit further. And they were the stones that we used for Stonehenge as well, sarsen stone they're called. And inside of that gigantic stone circle are 2 smaller stone circles, but still very large, about 100 meters across, which contained about 30 standing stones. And it was fed by 2 huge, gigantic, megalithic processional ways called avenues, which stretched for 1.5 miles, containing 200 standing stones, paired, like opposite one another. So it was gigantic. And you would walk down these processional ways, which, dowsing and equipment alike, it strongly suggests at certain points, where those irons come out of the ground, you're like being bathed in something, like cleansed before you enter the sanctity of the stone circles. It's true, and it stretches across 3.5 miles of the ceremonial landscape. Avebury is vast. Stonehenge compared to Avebury is quite small, actually.
Right. Oh my gosh! Wow. I may have to add that to my UK trip when and if I get there.
Oh yeah, you have to go to the Avebury environs, because not only you have stone circles, megalithic avenues, you have Silbury Hill, which is the largest man-made mound in Europe. It's rises way out of the landscape, and it is truly vast. And it's built with 30-degree angle each side, and then close to Silbury Hill, this gigantic mound, you have the West Kennet Long Barrow, allegedly a long barrow. That was probably a secondary interment, like I keep explaining. And that's sited on a hill near Silbury Hill. So it's a huge megalithic wonderland, if you will, containing very diverse monuments. And then scattered all around that in the summer, you have crop circle after crop circle in the environs as well.
Oh, that's fascinating. And we didn't get to touch much on crop circle, but I can't help but wonder, we have so many definitions of, or hypotheses, I should say, of how these crop circles are created, and I can't help but wonder if the sound has something to do with it, or the vibration, or the frequency that we were talking about.
Yeah, could well be. I mean, what a lot of crop circle researchers say, and I'm not a crop circle researcher, I'm more in your stone circles,
right.
but I'm around this areas, and I know most of the researchers, so to speak, some very well. They seem to think that there's light, the balls of light we were discussing earlier, they have been continually filmed in the crop circles as part of their formation, possibly. And then you have, undoubtedly, frequency levels going on within the crop circles and other earth energies, and as well as a lot of people that go in there seem to open up cosmically speaking. So you'll get people that have a day job, and the next minute they've channeled something from the Pleiades, for example. They're really like cosmic gateways, like portals. So they really do kind of open you up cosmically speaking.
Right. And Maria, this is probably going to be our last question for today's show, but I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit of kind of like, I would say, what would your message be for the world, and why is it important for us to rediscover the why and the how to use it, why is it there, and what it can do to help us? What is the motivation, and what can be the potential for humanity once we understand everything?
Well, to me, ancient wisdom is fine, it's great, and we can look back to the ancient past, but really we should be incorporating ancient wisdom in our modern day lives. So for me, my vision is for the future is to integrate energy lines, and for example, some energy lines are said to enhance our ability to communicate. Some energy lines are said to be healing. We have the geospiral phenomenon that, again, is said to be very beneficial. And I'd like to see, modern day building programs, when buildings have to be constructed, to be literally plugged into the grid, if you will, plugged into Mother Earth, so that we're constantly connected, especially places like hospitals, care homes. And one global grid system, for example, is said to enhance the power of communication. And could you imagine if autistic children could integrate with this energy system? So I see so much potential by reconnecting to the ancient wisdom, but applied to a modern generation.
Oh, yes, definitely. And I couldn't agree more with you with that. I feel that... Well, I forgot who said it, but somebody said, all these esoteric formulas and this ancient wisdom is basically science that has not yet to be discovered.
Absolutely. That's a fantastic one-liner.
Yeah. And I feel that we definitely could be using it to better humanity and better our lives and have clarity in our lives as well, think more clearly. Well, I want to thank you very, very much, Maria. We're so very grateful you were able to spend this time with us today, and we look forward to hearing about your trip. let's remind everybody that you can join Maria. You're going to be there personally, of course, for the tour.
Myself, Gary Evans, and James that you mentioned earlier for the Newgrange Island experience.
Right.
Yeah, we're coming together around about July the 15th. Check it out on my website, theaveryexperience.co.uk, or Infinite Connections as well, and have a read about it and see if you feel drawn to it.
Sounds wonderful, and I can't wait to follow up on your work and see if you find any third frequency.
I heard it from Bernard.
Well, thank you again for joining us, everyone, and listening to the Just Bernard Show. We'll be back next week with alternative culture icon Gregory Sams will be joining us for 2 hours, and we'll be discussing his life's work here on the Just Bernard Show. Have a wonderful week, everyone.
Listening to Revolution Radio.
The finder of lost children and missing persons. Monique Lassan. Surveillance, civil and criminal investigations. I investigate.
No, I am the chosen one.
Do not underestimate the power of good, and do not dismiss the strength of the child.
Yes, every Thursday afternoon on Revolution Radio, come join our very own Eye Investigatrix, Monique Lassan, with her Private Eye X-Files. Private Eye X-Files, every Thursday from 2 to 4 p.m. Eastern Time on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com.
I realize it's very hard for you to take in. But is your destiny to find the golden child?
Anti-aircraft guns went into action against unidentified aircraft in the Los Angeles area shortly after 3 a.m. Pacific wartime this morning.
We are far stronger than we were 10 weeks ago.
Zero quarters, all hands man your battle stations.
Be nervous about your toes. I'll do the mastermind around here.
You who have not seen it do not know what hell looks like from the top.
Bam! Check it out every Tuesday and Saturday on Revolution Radio. It's a double dose of the internationally recognized renegade military historian Douglas Dietrich.
You'll stay right where you are until I tell you to move out.
Yeah, that's right. Tuesdays from 10 to midnight Eastern Time. Join Douglas Dietrich.
There is no denying the world is awakening. We see it in the global uprisings and demonstrations of the people around the planet and the new way of thinking and living that is arising naturally within each one of us and our communities. I have been a major player in this global shift and movement for over 20 years and have helped tens of thousands of people around the world change their lives and find their voice in order to help create the paradigm change we so desperately need. Join me here at Revolution Radio on the Just Bernard Show every Tuesday at noon Eastern Time for 2 hours of powerful interviews and discussion with some of the most influential visionaries of consciousness, alternative media, and suppressed knowledge. We promise to reveal the real matrix and empower your human experience.